Kia ora, bros and girls, welcome back to the channel. So we're back with the completion guide for Chapter 3 of Ultron's Assault, which is Variant 1. And I'm going to say that once you've made it past Chapter 2, Chapter 3, for the first pass is probably a little bit harder, but for exploration is a little bit easier. And there are some easier maps in here than Chapter 2 for sure. So I'm going to say there's basically one optimum team to get through this entire quest, and I'll show that team here, and that's the one with Thing and his synergy. Now the reason for this team being the best team for this is, first of all, you're restricted to science and cosmic champs, so that works really well. But also this gives you 2 cheat deaths and makes Thing really quite OP. And so let's just put the team together and we'll talk a little bit about different things. Now, apart from this team, the only other person that might be really quite useful in here is also Void. Void is really amazing. You can put him in for some of the fights, particularly when against Power Gain Hyperion, and also Void can be really good. Also Human Torch, of course, because you can reverse heal that way. You can also use Luke Cage with the champion synergy if you don't have this full team, and you don't need this full team in 5-star or 6-star because it's completely open, so even a 3-star Heimdall will do the trick here. The main ones you're going to use for this, apart from Thing, of course, doing all the damage, is you're going to use Hela's ability, and you might need to use Void's regen. Now the other alternatives, or the other options, if you don't have this team or you don't have Thing, is to either wait it out, or you can also use Gulk for some of the boss fights. And if you're very good, you might be able to use Medusa to shut down some of the bosses if you have quite a stacked Dusa. So with that being said, let's pop in and have a little bit of a look. So let's go through Chapter 1 first of all. Chapter 1's got a few paths, but the easiest one is probably this Aspect of Chaos one, from memory. So this is where Hela Awakened comes in really handy, or if you just have Heimdall as well, you can totally cheese this path. Basically, Aspect of Chaos, the whole path means that every 10 seconds you switch health with the defender. So all you need to do is basically hang out until about 7-8 seconds, let your life go down to almost 1, and then take a hit at around 8 or 9 seconds just before you switch, and then you're indestructible. And as soon as it switches, you just throw an SP1 or you throw an attack, and the opponent is dead and you're back on full life, and you can rinse and repeat this the entire way. Now if you have Hela, it's a little bit easier because her indestructible is like 5 or 6 seconds. You can also do it with Luke Cage if you're particularly careful, but the problem with Luke Cage is you got to take damage to get you down to 1 HP first. And with Heimdall, if you don't have Hela, you can use Heimdall and anyone to really cheese this path. So you just got to be a little bit more careful on the timing. So then that will take care of Juggernaut, Magic. It doesn't really matter because you don't have to worry about the fun interactive damage, because once again you're just swapping life at the end and throwing one special. Same with Thor Ragnarok, same with everybody on this path. There's no one here that's going to be quite difficult, no one here that has like a degen. You might have to be a little bit careful with Corvus, just so you don't take too much block damage, but if you time it right, it shouldn't matter anyway. And then the science drone, I think it's a vision, but you don't have to worry about it if you use this method. Then the mystic drone is an Iron Man, you don't have to worry about it if you use this method. And then you go to the final boss. Now the final boss, there's a few versions of Ultron, and from memory actually you also get ambushed by another Ultron, which doesn't have a lot of abilities, but it's a good warm-up fight for the final Ultron. Now the final Ultron, I think all of them in this chapter have Limber, which means that you can't parry, so you're going to have to get pretty good at evading the SP1 and cycling through that. They're also immune to ability accuracy reduction, but I'm fairly sure Medusa would, Armor Shatter would shut that ability down as well. Um, Masochism is something you don't really need to worry about if you're using Thing. And basically what this guy has is he's got these, at the start of the fight he gains some random deactivated buff, and every time, let's read this, buff that will change every 7.5 seconds, and while the opponent inflicts the debuff, Ultron activates or refreshes the current buff. So basically every 7.5 seconds he's going to have like a massive power gain, massive armor up, or massive regen. Now if you play this right with the Think synergy, and I'll show some gameplay of that, you can basically one-shot this guy quite easily. You kill off your entire team, you get Thing into indestructible. The trick with this one is you want to start off taking hits. You don't want to parry him and build up your rock stack charges. You actually want to start the fight taking hits with Thing after your whole team is dead, of course. But Thing is the only one alive. You come in, you take the hits, you set up the indestructible, you build those indestructible charges, and then about 3/4 of the way through, or when you've got enough charges, you start looking at getting into a rotation of SP1 and damage. Ideally, you're not going to be able to finish this guy off with an SP2 because he's got a lot of life, or any of the bosses in this chapter. So what you really need to do is probably try to target getting it to your SP3 as quickly as possible, doubling the indestructible damage, particularly if you have like a 5-star rank 4 Thing, 5-star rank 5, or a 6-star rank 1. And then that way it's just about staying in the fight, evading that SP1, baiting out the SP1, and hitting in for a large amount of damage. You may have to take a couple of parries here and there, and that's okay if you haven't taken parries at the start of the fight, because you might have probably 5 or 6 parries before his limber, before you're out of parries completely, and that's okay as a backstop, but it's not essential. Now, the reason I particularly like this specific team is because you actually have 2 cheat death. One cheat with the champion's indestructible, which allows you to get the indestructible charges and takes you back to 20%, so you can get the charges to build up quite nicely, and then you've still got some leeway as well. And then if you mess up, you still have Heimdall, which will trigger in right at the end. So that should give you a couple of options to be able to last out this fight. And normally if you've got a Thing that's 5-star rank 4 or above, with enough charges you should be able to out damage this guy and should be able to dispose of him quite easily, and I'll put the videos of those up. So that takes care of this chapter. So basically all you really need to complete it is an awakened Hela. Even a 3-star will do, and if you have the synergy you can use Thing to very easily take care of the Ultron. If not, then you're going to have to get a little bit more creative. You might have to start using some heavy damage dealers. You might want to look at a stacked Medusa, or any one strong that you've got in this particular class. Hulk Ragnarok will come in quite handy as well later on if you don't have Thing, or if you don't have access to the synergy. But with this synergy, I didn't have to change for a single line or a single boss. It also works on Chapter 2, so if we have a look at Chapter 2, I'm going to say with this synergy, every path is an easy path, but I think the easiest path here was not the Spite one, not the Extinction Protocol, was the Increased Power Gain one. And I think you come down through, you fight the Cosmic Drone, which is basically a Magneto, and then Overreach doesn't really matter. You don't worry because you're not tripping Furies with Thing. Wolverine X-23 is pretty easy, and Thing is he's bleed immune. Hyperion's a little bit tricky, but again, with a 5-star rank 4 or above Thing, you should be able to make quick work of him, taking the indestructibles, throwing one SP2, chaining the stun, and he shouldn't be a problem at all. Phoenix is very, very easy to fight. You evade the SP1, you evade the SP2. Just be careful on the last hit because she's going to regen. You wait out until after her regen is, and then you go back in and you finish her off. The Cosmic Drone is just another Magneto drone. That should be pretty easy enough. The champion, he doesn't have his ability because he's not like the final guy in the quest, so he's actually pretty easy. And if you finish him in one, you're not going to worry about him going unstoppable and stuff. He can be a little bit of a pain as the final boss of as the final or the biggest boss in a map, but as a node, he's actually pretty easy, and you can easily kill this guy with Thing before he even gets to two persistent charges. So you take care of him, and then you got Mutant Mutant Drone, which is basically Electro. And once again, remember, you just got to make sure that you leave a lot of space if you're evading the SP1. And if you're evading the SP2, and you can also block the SP2, but if you're evading the SP2 with Thing, it doesn't matter because you're shock immune anyway. But just be careful a little bit with the timing. I've mentioned this before in other videos. The SP1 takes about 2/3 of the screen. So if you're dashing back, you need to be back quite a way before you start doing that. And the SP2 timing changes depending on whether you're very close to Electro or whether you're quite far. If you're very close to him, then basically when he taps the ground and the shockwave comes out, you can basically dash back at the exact same time he taps the ground because you're quite near. If you're further away and he throws the SP2, then you have to track that shockwave as it travels through the ground, and just before it reaches you, that's when you dash back. So the timing can be a little bit confusing, but generally with this fight, again with Thing, once you've got the charges, you quickly get to the SP2 and you chain stun him, and he never even has the time to throw either SP1 or SP2. And I'll probably not only just put videos of the boss fights, I might do a full run just to show what I'm talking about with the Thing gameplay. So stay tuned to the channel, and that'll be posted as well. And then you get to the final boss, and the second boss is a little bit trickier than the first one. Again, it got limber, so you can't rely on parry. You have to bait out the SP1. You have to learn how to evade the SP1 really, really well and go back in. He's got Pilfer, which isn't really a big deal. It is a big deal if you're coming in with Medusa, and you have to kind of shut him down really, really quickly. Otherwise, he's going to get a lot of power and stuff, and a lot of regen. And Extinction Protocol can be quite annoying. But once again, it's pretty similar strategy. You come in with Thing, you build up your charges, you don't parry to begin with, and then once you've got your charges built up, you're looking at cycling that SP1, getting yourself to the SP3 as quickly as possible, so you can throw the SP3 and double your charges, and get 200% for each charge. And then it's just a matter of cycling through the SP1 and doing heavy damage with Thing until you finish him off. He's got a little bit more life than the first boss, but not as much as the third boss. But he doesn't really prove to be too much of a problem. So then we're going to go to the third chapter, and again you'd be using the exact same synergy. And the third chapter has a couple of the trickiest fights in Variant, as some people find this quite a bit of a struggle. You definitely don't want to go down this Electro Korg line. It can be done with Thing, and I have done it, but you probably will need a revive for that particular path. Or you just need to be really good with the timing and really good at counteracting kind of the interactive damage and timing when the shield goes down and stuff like that. But anyway, that's not the path you're going to go for completion. You're definitely not going to go MODOK for completion. Most likely you're not going to go Domino, so you're probably going to go up this one, which is Vision. With Pilfer, again, Pilfer is kind of a non-node. If you're using Thing, it doesn't really matter. And then you're going to go up through Wasp, and then you kind of have your choice. You can go through Hood, you can go through Unstoppable Colossus, or you can go through Hood and Nightcrawler. It's up to you. With Thing, really, Hood and Unstoppable Colossus, it's not a big deal anyway, because you're probably going to kill them too quickly for their spite to matter. And because his indestructible furies are actually passive, they won't count towards spite anyway. So this path is probably easy. You don't have to worry too much about Wasp, because even if she evades, the main annoying thing about Wasp is the shock damage, but Thing is immune to shock. So if you evade and take shock damage, you're not going to take any damage anyway. So it's just kind of an annoying evade rather than anything else. And then you can continue going up this path. You get to the Mutant Drone, which is again Electro. I've talked about this to death. but it doesn't matter. Just finish him off with Thing. Then Heimdall on Pilfer. Heimdall is a little bit tricky because if you can't finish him off in one, it's probably good to use the parries and rotate through the SP1, evading the SP1 and getting back in there. Don't try to push him to his SP2 because it can be a little bit nasty, and if you get stuck with an SP3 you can still get done. So either make sure you can kill him in one, depending on how high rank your Thing is, or then cycle through that SP1. And then you get to the final two bosses, or the final mini and boss. And a lot of people will struggle with the mini actually. Sometimes more so than the boss, although to be fair, both of them are really, really annoying, or can be annoying, but not for us. So the mini is a Hulk, and this Hulk has aspect of 4, which means your block proficiency continues to decrease throughout the fight, and then he goes unstoppable and he goes unblockable. Sorry, after a little while, and you've got to just deal with intercepting him. So you've got to have your skills on, or you've got to be able to take him down really, really quick. And this guy's pretty tanky. I think he's got like 250k HP. He's got a fair bit of life. Enhanced furies, and then other than that, he's got nothing really major apart from the fisticuffs. Oh yeah, sorry. And with all of this, the global node is fisticuffs. So that's the node you gotta take care of for the first 10 seconds for this whole map. For the first 10 seconds, you're not going to be able to parry, and you're not going to be able to cast any debuffs on. So you just have to kind of keep away for the first 7 to 8 seconds, and then you can start taking damage and going on from there. So same thing with this guy. Once you play around the fisticuffs, it's not so bad, but then once you get into aspect of 4, that can get annoying if this fight gets longer, so you want to be able to burst damage it, and there's no better burst damage guy in this quest than Thing. The strategy doesn't change. You come in with Thing, you take the indestructible charges, and you have a go at this guy, and you can probably take him down in 2. You might have to evade 1 special. You just have to be careful not to parry and to try and evade as much as possible. I found that if you have to, evading his SP2 is a bit easier than evading the SP1. And just make sure that you're not taking a lot of block damage, because with aspect of 4, he can still do a lot of damage. And if you don't time that right, he can bring out the Heimdall second cheat death a little bit earlier than you thought. And then all of a sudden you're in a bad place, and you take a hit and you die. So you got to be a little bit careful with him, but he can be one-shotted quite regularly and quite easily with Thing. And then once you get rid of him, then you're up against Ultron. And Ultron is one of the most annoying bosses, not only because he's got fisticuffs at the beginning and because of the limber, but because of this EMP modification, right? And a lot of the shock immune guys are like Doom, who's a mystic. Electro is good for this fight if you have like a stacked 5-star Electro, but if you don't have Thing, you're going to need a Gulk, Gladiator Hulk. You're going to need Electro, or maybe a stacked Medusa. And if you can get the armor shatter off really quickly and get a little bit of RNG, you might be able to shut it down. But the most regular and easy way to do this is the same strategy. Bring in the Thing, dance away for the first 5 to 10 seconds of the fight, take your hits, build up your indestructible charges, and then work your way towards your SP3 while continuing to bait out his SP1 and evading. And then you can get stacked damage, and within a few rotations of that, you should be able to one-shot him with Thing. The EMP modifications aren't going to do any damage to you, because all it does is it returns some shock damage, which you're immune to. And then that will be your first clear. That will be a rank 3 to 4 free gem, some 5-star shards, some T5Bs, or half a T5B, and you've completed Variant 1. So that's not too bad. And you can basically use the same team for exploration completely. Now I'm going to do an exploration, guys, because there's a couple of lines like this Electro Korg that are a little bit trickier, and we're going to talk about that more in that particular video. But other than that, that's the quick and easy way and best team to deal with the whole of Variant 1 Chapter 3. And I'm going to put some videos up again of all the boss fights, just showing what I mean and showing how you can one-shot both these guys in a row with Thing quite regularly and quite easily, so you can watch and just figure out what actually works and where you're going wrong if you're struggling with that. And that should be relatively an itemless completion. So hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, like, subscribe, share it with your alliance, share it with your friends, and stay tuned because we'll be doing the exploration guides, and I'll also be uploading the tougher fights and the boss fights for all the chapters in the next few days or weeks, depending. Okay, kakite no bros and girls.